So, coming to history optional, the reality is that we must understand the syllabus demand and we must go through the previous year's questions in order to analyze the trends and patterns of questions being asked or the focused areas in the history optional. That's very important. So, we will be having a quick analysis on what are the focus areas or what are things must be done in this paper 1, paper 2. Paper 1, we know there is ancient India and medieval India. Paper 2 is modern India, world history. So, what are things must be done for which we will have a very quick marathon analysis on the trends, patterns, and the core topics of each area. Okay. Yeah, Henna, what do you say?
So my first question is,
Hmm.
what all topics to be dealt in the first unit of sources?
Sources, of course. We will go with the syllabus first. So, coming to the sources, the first unit in this paper 1, section A, sources as it is given in the syllabus, well defined syllabus and themes or topics are given. Archaeological sources, exploration, excavation, epigraphy, numismatics, monuments, literary sources, indigenous, primary, secondary, poetry, scientific literature, literature and regional languages, religious literature, foreign accounts of Greeks, Chinese, Arab writers. This is exactly, clearly defined in the syllabus itself. What are the sources like these literary sources, archaeological sources, primary sources, secondary sources, indigenous sources, foreign sources, what all things you have to do. So these sources means I would say that this is the fundamental of your history optional preparation, because you just see when you write any answers and when you give any arguments or counter arguments substantiating your views, the thing is that you have to give maximum sources. I mean, you have to support your arguments, your viewpoints with the sources. It can be primary sources, secondary sources, it can be indigenous, or it can be foreign, it can be archaeological, it can be literary sources. So having a clear cut idea on the sources, their narratives, or how they deal with the various concepts of the history, especially early history, that is the administration, the governance system, or about the evolution of religions, evolution of philosophies, or about various civilizations, about the socio-economic, political, cultural patterns, for which we have to substantiate our views, our arguments, our points with the relevant sources. So having a good grip over sources, that is one of the very fundamental thing every aspirant with the history optional supposed to do, because sources have that much. You just look into the type of the questions they asked from the sources. Have a look into this. There is a question like this: ancient Indians had no taste for historiography. Their scholars cared more for religious, spiritual, philosophical studies. Indian historiography is essentially an Islamic heritage. Comment upon this statement with a special reference to the contemporary writers, their works which help us in reconstruction of history of early medieval era of Indian history. So we must know what are the contributions of early Indian historians or Arabic historians with regard to, I mean, various socio-economic, political, cultural systems, institutions, how being narrated or discussed or portrayed by these Indian historians or these foreign historians, or what are the contributions of these different historians in reconstruction of this medieval history or even the early history is concerned. So you must go for both these, I mean, the points which support this idea. Also you have to explore what are the contributions of Indian writers, historians in reconstructing the history of early India and early medieval India, etc. So reconstruction of history where, of course, the contributions of Indian writers, foreign writers, or these literary sources, primary sources, secondary sources, indigenous sources, or these foreign sources, they are very much important. There is another question they asked. Reconstruction of early Indian history is hardly possible without the help of inscriptions and coins. So, with regard to reconstruction of Indian history, the political, economic, social, religious, or intellectual history, see, what is the role played by these coins or these inscriptions? The role of archaeological evidences in reconstruction of this early Indian history. Similar way, What are the accounts of Greek, Roman, Chinese foreign travelers, or how they are helpful in reconstructing social history of India, about the social institutions, about the women, about the status of education, social hierarchies, etc., occupations, etc. What light do early inscriptions literature throw on the status of women? That is another question. Then, on basis of contemporary sources, assess the nature of banking and usury in ancient India. Evaluate the ownership of land. So, ownership of the land, status of the women, then the nature of banking and usury in India, or how they are helpful in understanding this social history. Just look into this. Then there is a question like this: using foreigners' accounts, historians must distinguish between statements based on hearsay, those grounded in perspective observations. So here the problem with the many of the early foreign travelers to us and these historians, the biggest problem is that many are, the statements are not based on any valid scientific observations or examinations. Without that, they made certain statements and many of them gone wrong. I mean, for example, there is a concept, Megasthenes made a statement that there is absence of slavery, or there is a concept like a seven caste divisions or a seven layer divisions of society, absence of usury. So many foreigners made certain records, that is with lots of false informations that lacks a proper scientific research or examination, etc. So you have to analyze, you have to go for, I mean, when these foreigners or early historians made certain observations, to what extent they are true, to what extent they are untrue. That also with the contemporary sources, we have to analyze the false observations and right observations made by these early historians or travelers. um, there is a question how this Sruti literature can be used as a historical source. Sruti literature, they reveal the political, economic, social, cultural, religious conditions of that age to a greater extent, even though it is religious literature. So, to what extent it can be used as a historical source? Then again, so many questions are there. Kalhana's Rajatarangani, best example of history written tradition in early India. So, according to many of the modern historians, Kalhana's Rajatarangani is the first ever work of the history writing kind of quality with the proper scientific observations, examinations, and research. Yes, a proper work of Indian history is done for the first time, that is by Kalhana in his Rajatarangani. So question is that it can be a best example of history writing tradition in early India. When you discuss this, you have to go for both its merits and demerits as a history, best example of early history tradition. Then foreigners' accounts as a source of ancient history may have some advantages, some shortcomings. Archaeological evidences often help in better understanding of literary sources, because sometimes you see literary sources can be a little bit exaggerations would be there. If it is a religious literature, it may lack some scientific observations. So in that scenario, how much it is corroborating with these contemporary sources, especially archaeological sources, helpful in better understanding of literary sources. Okay, so just see that this is the way they asked different. They asked about the political history revealed by the sources, social history revealed by the sources, or the status of the women revealed by sources, or the disadvantages of foreigners' accounts, or how these literary sources can be studied along with these archaeological sources. Okay, or how this particular what is called this religious literature can be used as historical sources. The history of the land ownership. So history of this banking and usury practices in ancient India. So this is the way they can ask you questions. Okay, the political information, social informations, economic informations, cultural informations, India's international relations. Okay, how these informations are revealed from various sources, primary, secondary sources, especially primary sources, archaeological sources, and literary sources. So, most importantly, I would say that you set the template when you study this module. You have to focus on the keywords being asked so far From this much questions, you will get a clear picture what all things you have to focus in this particular module when you study the sources, what all the perspectives or what all the roads you have to take when you study the sources. Okay, so best thing is that I would say just focus on the questions and their keywords. It will give you a clear picture where to focus while preparing that sources. Okay, you have a template like the primary sources, secondary sources, archaeological sources, literary sources, indigenous sources, foreign sources. Okay, fine.
Okay, sir. What are the focus areas in second unit, prehistory and proto-history?
Prehistory and proto-history. Prehistory is something where written records are not available, and proto-history is something a transitional age between this unwritten historic age and prehistoric age and this historic age. Now, in the syllabus, they say the keywords like this: geographical factors, hunting, gathering, beginning of agriculture. Geographical factors formulating these prehistoric, proto-historic ages, hunting, gathering communities of the age, beginning of agriculture. So, you will have to explore, yes, the pattern of settlement of these people, their economic activities or their social things, the religion, or how was the geography contributed to evolution of these various Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic, Chalcolithic ages. Those things you have to focus. Now, what is important in our history optional, there is a 50 marks objective question, that is mark the sites or identify the sites marked in this map and give short description. So this is very important. You have to go for prehistoric settlements. For example, Paleolithic settlements, Mesolithic settlements, Neolithic settlements, Chalcolithic settlements. You must know, and certain areas are known for prehistoric artwork also. So just look into the question, how they asked the questions from this second module. See, there is a question: to what extent archaeological materials are useful in understanding the progress of Neolithic men? So the archaeological materials, what all the archaeological evidence is available, maybe the kind of these stone tools they used, or the remains of the their living huts, or the animals, the bones of these animals they domesticated, or this what is called charcoals, and whatever the things available from which you have to construct the history of these Neolithic men. Then there is a question: in the absence of written script, Chalcolithic pottery gives a fascinating insight into these cultures and lifestyles of people of this time. So, pottery, how the pottery of this age can be used as a historical source to identify the living pattern or living styles and social life of these Chalcolithic men. There is a question: characteristics of Neolithic age in India. Emergence account for regional characteristics of Neolithic age. Neolithic age represents revolution due to significant changes. Yes, Neolithic age, there is settled agriculture, there is villages sort of living, family sort of living, refinement in their tool making, or refinement in their food processing. So many changes happened in the Neolithic age. That's why it's a revolution in the prehistoric age. So this is the way they asked the question. So most importantly, your focus has to be on, when you study this, you must have an idea how these elements, the social elements, the living styles, or maybe their characteristics of their settlement pattern, or their religion, their beliefs. Okay, how the basic tenets or qualities of these elements changed and continued from Paleolithic to Mesolithic to Neolithic to Chalcolithic. The proper settlements of these prehistoric men, that is important, and their aesthetic sense, their art, Lokadia, Bimbedega, see certain cave paintings you can see. So their contributions to cave paintings, prehistoric art and artistic sense is important for us. How they constitute as a historical source to explore the life of this primitive man, that's important. So just to study, just to prepare the template of these social or cultural or economic patterns of these and religious beliefs of these prehistoric men of Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic, and Chalcolithic. How the features being transitioned, how they're being traveled from one age to another, then to another, what all things changed, modified, altered, continued. Those things you have to take care. And the historiography part is also important. There are lots of historians, they make observations on these living styles or this social life or the cultural relationships of these primitive men. Regarding this, many historians made some observations that also you have to, because in order to say something, in order to support your idea, you need these historical narratives or narratives by different popular historians.
Okay, sir. Moving to next question. Indus Valley Civilization is the third unit.
Okay.
What sort of questions we should anticipate in this portion?
Yes, look into this. They're asking for the origin, date, extent, characteristics, decline, survival, significance, and art and architecture of Indus civilization. So we know that this is a module important in your GS preparation also. Prelims they asked so many questions, mains they asked so many questions. Look into certain questions, I would say, right from 1979. Give an appraisal of town planning of Indus cities and evaluate various reasons for their decline. An appraisal of town planning of Indus cities and reasons for their decline. So there are many factors contributed to its urban culture, many factors contributed to its deurbanization. Now, of course, you also say the characteristics of this town planning of Indus civilization. That is a central idea of these UPSC questions from IBC. Discuss trade and cultural contacts within and outside India. Describe in detail any one of Indus sites within India. So you should know what are the cultural contacts of Indus people within India and outside India. Was India civilized before the advent of Aryans? State briefly the extent and striking features of early civilization. Yes, if we were civilized before Aryan people, we must say how, why, where, and to what extent that was civilized. Similar way, they asked the striking features of that early civilization. So you will know it's what is called a town planning, or it's like town planning architectural features, then social features, or it's economic features. So various things will say that yes, we had a civilization before the arrival of Aryans, and you have to evaluate or you have to illustrate to what extent it was civilized. Okay. Then there is a question: how do you account for the decline of major cities of Indus civilization? I'm not explaining the questions. I'm just telling you the core areas only. How do you account for the decline of major cities of Indus civilization? Okay. Then Indus civilization had an abrupt end. Indus civilization did not have an abrupt appearance. External trade of the civilization, burial customs of civilization, then the religion of Indus civilization, continuity of Indus civilization, salient features of Indus civilization, then elements of urban civilization of Harappan culture, distribution and significance of farming cultures outside Indus, development of urbanization, significance of seals and sealings, water management and conservation planning, diversity of subsistence base, why many Harappan settlements are in the semi-arid zones, ecological factors influenced the flow and ebb of the civilization. Indus Saraswati cultural zone exhibited both homogeneity and diversity. Harappan art contributes to understanding of aesthetic sensibilities in addition to spiritual ritualistic life. See, these are the questions they asked. So what I am saying is that you just frame the template of the keywords from the questions. You will understand, yes, these are, I mean, when I said this much questions, around 25 to 30 questions, see, some areas you might have noticed that are repeatedly asked. One is, factors contributing to rise of this urban civilization. factors contributing to decline of this urban civilization, or they asked about this international trade of Indus civilization. They asked about the social features of Indus civilization. They asked about this religion of Indus civilization, or they asked about this what is called aesthetic sensibilities, sensibilities of Indus people from their art. So Harappan art. So that is why I say that from each module you prepare a template. Okay, these are the keywords from questions. So I must focus on these areas, because I say if you take the last 20 years, I say especially option like a history, the core areas are being repeatedly asked. If you have a basic current affair reading and a thorough analysis of history modules, it is done. Then, of course, Harappa, when you study this Indus civilization, several times UPSC asked pre Harappan settlements, mature Harappan settlements, urban settlements, rural settlements of this Indus civilization for mapping part, or the trade centers of Indus civilization. So, based on these questions, I would say focus these things. That's it.
Okay, sir. My next question. Fourth unit is megalithic
Ah,
cultures,
okay.
but it is bit confusing.
Ah, megalithic is nothing but it is megalith. Megalithic, you see, big stone. The story of the big stone structures, megalithic structures. Okay, the story of this Deccan South India. See where they built huge stone structures. Mostly they are tombs or burial sites. Okay, or commemorative sites where some munis are buried, or some prayer halls. They acted as a prayer hall, or there can be stones, tubas or stambas celebrating the victory of a certain rajas. So megalithic structures, the history or the story of the big stone structures, okay, that goes along with these iron cultures of South India. So in the syllabus, they say distribution of pastoral and farming cultures outside the Indus, development of community life settlement, development of agricultural craft, pottery, iron industry. This is something the syllabus. Now coming to the questions, you can see discuss the extended settlement pattern, subsistence economy of these megalithic people. Discuss extended settlement patterns and subsistence economy of megalithic cultures. So you must know what are various economic activities of these megalithic people, or what are the settlement patterns, their urban settlement, the rural settlement, about the trade, okay, or what all the areas where they settled, what was that span of their settlement. These ideas you must have. Then, in what ways can the megalithic culture considered as a foundational phase of the history of peninsular India? And will it be proper to consider megaliths to represent a single homogeneous or contemporaneous culture? What kind of material life cultural system is revealed in megalithic? Discuss different types of megalithic burial practices. How help us to understand the religious belief and cultural practices? So, most importantly, there are so many. You heard about muniaras in Kerala. So lots of such huge stone structures are there. Most of them are burial practices or tomb structures or commemorative these so-called menhirs and all. Okay, stambas, stone stambas and all. So the concept is that how these structures reveal their cultural life, the religious belief, or the religious beliefs, religious practices about their settlement pattern, or about their like social life. Okay, how these things reveal from these megalithic structures. So when you study this, your focus has to be on have an idea what was the social life of this megalithic people, or what are the social divisions of this megalithic people, what are their economic activities, and what sort of relations they maintained with the regional cultures and all. You how to focus on these core areas. Then of course from mapping point of view, they asked the various megalithic settlements in India. So you should know, even though the largest concentration of megalithic settlements is in South India, You should know what are the various divisions, of this megalithic settlements. Okay, that's it.
Fifth unit is Aryans and Vedic era.
Okay.
So what should be covered?
Aryans and Vedic era, again, we will take from this PYQs only. In the syllabus, it says that religious and philosophic literature, transformation from RVC to LVC, political, social, economic life, significance of Vedic age, evolution of monarchy and Varna system. These are the things, noted in the syllabus part. The questions will go like this: an account of geography of the Vedic test, describe the social life during Vedic times, political pattern, major religious ideas and rituals of Vedic age, then position of Varuna in Vedic system of gods, democratic elements in the political system of early Vedic age, position of women, formulation of social system in LVC, then a comparison between this Indus Valley civilization and this RVC on the religion, society, and economy. Then there was a question about the religious ideas and rituals of the Vedic age, change and continuity between RVC to LVC. What all thing changed? Social life, economic life, cultural life, religious life, or ritual practices. What all things continued? What all things changed? Differences and similarities between IVC and Vedic age. Then there was a question on Vedic literature or how they reveal the social life, or a question on this, you know, human settlements as gleaned from Vedic sources, Upanishadic principles, Varna concept, archaeology knows of no Aryans, only literature knows of Aryans, examine critically. So even though literature is the main source to explore these Aryans, we must also know what are the archaeological sources available to understand the life of these Aryans. No? Then they asked about this early character of the Vedic society. They asked about Vedic Harappan relationship. They asked about this nature of religion and classification of gods in RVC. They asked about the taxation system. They asked a question about iron problem. So just to say the keywords, one is understood that you must have a very thorough and a very comprehensive analysis on the change and continuity between RVC to LVC. How the socio-economic, cultural, religious life, socio-economic, cultural, religious lives differed from RVC to LVC. What all changes, what all continuities. Similar way, Vedic life versus Indus civilization. The comparison is there. Also, you must know the sources. Different literary sources and these archaeological sources help us to explore this Vedic culture. Also, you must know the status of the women, or the element of democracy, or the political institutions, or the taxation system, or the life of these subaltern people of the Vedic age, and especially the limits and the positives of this literature, especially Shruti literature, or how the Shruti literature reveal religion, goals, sacrifices, rituals, or social institutions, or about the women of this RVC, LVC. So these are elements you have to focus. I always say that based on the keywords, you prepare the templates, you prepare the short notes, and you prepare accordingly. Also, you should know what are the RVC settlements, LVC settlements.
Okay, sir. Sixth unit is period of Mahajanapadas.
Yes,
How to handle this module in optional point of view?
yes. This sixth unit dealing with the 6th century BC. 6th century BC is an age of intellectual revolution. Intellectual revolution, especially rise of heterodox sects like Buddhism, Jainism, and all. Okay, Ajivika, so many sects born. This was also an age of state formation. You see, the tribes merged into Rashtras, or what I say is like Janas, Janpadas, Mahajanpadas. So the concept is like kingdoms formulated during this time. 16 kingdoms were there. So usually the questions are like this. Just to see, they asked the questions like this: trace the rise of Magadhan imperialism. Out of 16 Mahajanpadas, one of the very powerful imperial empire or kingdom was Magadha. So the contributory factors or factors leading to rise of Magadha as an imperial power. Or similar way, they asked about the characteristics of these monarchical states and semi-republican states. Semi-republican states. Then they asked questions about these socio-economic conditions of this North India during these Mahajanpadas. They asked a question about this second phase of urbanization. So this 6th century BC also marks, along with this rise of 16 kingdoms in different parts of Indian subcontinent, it was also an age where this second urbanization was happened. Okay, so you must know what are factors contributed to this second urbanization, and there are many elements which contributed to rise of this Buddhism, Jainism. So in this context, you have to study the causes and consequences or outcomes of the rise of Buddhism, Jainism, how they contributed to this philosophical renaissance or intellectual renaissance or religious renaissance or the social change, or how they questioned the existing social hierarchies and social institutions. And similar way, you should also know that there are, the essence of the teachings of each Buddhism, Jainism, those elements are very much important for you. So this focus has to be, most importantly, you must have an idea. Yes, there are monarchical states existed, non-monarchical states existed. What are the characteristics or how they differ to each other? And now, what are the socio-economic conditions of this age? Why it is second phase of urbanization, or why there are heterosex born this time? What are the popular heterosex? Their essential teachings and philosophies, how they contributed to intellectual, religious, philosophical renaissance of ancient India. These are focus areas. Also, you focus certain foreign invasions of this age, Persian invasions and Alexander's invasions, and their implications. Here, all I would say that there are different narratives given by the historians, popular historians. It's also nice to go through the various historical narratives on various events of this age, okay, and about Buddhism, Jainism. Also, understand what are factors contributed to their decline and the spread, the reach, and all.
Okay, sir. Seventh unit is Mauryan Empire.
Yeah.
Can you say the frequently asked questions of this portion?
See, frequently asked questions is like, one is always they ask Ashoka's Dhamma. Ashoka is very important here. Ashoka's Dhamma, or what are the traits of this Dhamma? What are the qualities and features and ideas of Dhamma? It's a frequently asked question. Then there is a frequently asked question, that is Mauryan administration. How the different sources are helpful in understanding this Mauryan administration. That is a frequently asked question. Then what I say, yeah, Ashoka's Dhamma, Mauryan administration. Then Mauryan art is important, like the stupas, pillars, and courtyards. That part is a repeatedly asked area. Similar way, Ashokan inscriptions are important. Ashokan inscriptions are important. Or Mauryan architecture is important. Dhamma is important. Mauryan administration is important. These are frequently asked questions. Frequently asked question. Okay, Ashoka's religious policy. That is important. So this is something multiple times they asked. Multiple times they asked. So it is nice that the frequently asked questions or the related or the sub areas could be asked, and just build a template, just prepare flowcharts on these repeatedly asked areas from this Mauryan Empire. Okay.
Yes, sir. I'm confused with 8th unit.
Ah,
What is the Dark Age?
Dark Age, yes. This eighth unit is about the post Mauryan era, which deals with these various, post-Mauryan kingdoms, or post-Mauryan, what is called a state formations and all. There is Indo-Greeks, Shagas, Kushanas, Parthians, or out of Indians there is Singhas, Kanvas, Shadavahanas, etc. So actually, to some extent, it is called a dark age because a highly centralized administrative structure is broken. Many states are formed. That way, there is political fragmentation, or there is administrative fragmentation. So that way, it is a dark age. And comparing with the Mauryan and Guptan ages, comparatively sources to explore lesser sources to explore this post to Mauryan age. That way, it is a dark age. But coming to the cultural aspects, you see Gandhara, Madhura, Amaravati schools of culture, so many prehistoric, this rocket art and architecture evolved, paintings evolved, cultural schools evolved. In all this way, it is not dark age. Even the trade system was also flourishing. So that way it is not dark age. So when we say dark age, there are multiple perspectives. One is like a political fragmentation, is the lack of availability of enormous quantity of these literary sources to corroborate or to study that contemporary ages or the history. But in many other aspects it was not a dark age. So you have to balance both. When some historians say it is dark age, some historians say it is a golden age. So you have to balance it. Here also you will get lots of questions. One is like about this Gandhara art is asked, or the silk trade is asked, or India's contacts with the other world, the Asian worlds is asked. Then this was again Buddhist stupa is asked, or this Kushanas, Shadavahanas, or their cultural contributions is asked. Then what is called this Sanghas, Kushanas again asked. Then there are architectural contributions asked. So just to see what are the questions asked, what are the repeatedly asked areas, based on that you revise this module. Okay, again I would say that from mapping point of view, this is important. You must know, you must accurately pitch what all these important schools of sculptures or important trade centers or important rocket architecture centers or important capital cities or the very important educational centers, etc., of this post-modern age. That way, from mapping point, it is important.
Okay, sir. Ninth unit is dealing with the early Eastern Deccan and
Okay.
South history.
Okay.
Can you elaborate it?
Yeah, very simple. It's a early state and society in Eastern India, Deccan and South India. See the history of Karavela, the very powerful history of this Kalinga ruler Karavela, then this Deccan Shadavahanas, then Tamil Sangam states, Cholachera Pandya's history. Then there is, the Eastern Karavelas or the Southern Sangam rulers, their administration, their economy, their land grants, and the coinage. Those things you have to study here, or the spread of Buddhism during this age, Sangam literature. Sangam literature, we know that that is the early history of or historical work of this, or that can be treated as earliest sources to explore this history of the South. So Sangam literature, how they help us in understanding this Sangam polity, economy, culture, religion, status of women, etc. So it's a very interesting module. They asked so many questions here. For example, the role of trade centers, trade unions, Karavela, Kalinga ruler Karavela, his achievements, then the spread of Buddhism, then there is a question about this age, and especially South had a trade with the Roman Empire. So, what was the story of that trade between South Indian rulers and the Roman Empire? Then they asked about the social cultural life of this age. Then they asked about how the Sangam literature show the social cultural traditions of this South India. So, questions are, I would say that this old wine in new bottles. New words are used, phrases are used, but the theme is the same only. Okay. Yes.
Sir, 10th unit deals with Guptas, Vagadagas, Vardhanas. What will must expect from this?
Yeah, Gupta's Swagatagas Vardhanas, I would say, as the syllabus says, just underline the keywords there. There is polity, administration, economic conditions, coinage, land grants, decline of urban centers, Indian feudalism, caste system, position of women, educational institutions. Yes, scientific literature, art, architecture. This is something. See, Gupta age is regarded as a golden age in art, architecture, literature, astronomy, astrology, mathematics, physics. So many findings and innovations and so many writings happened this age. So focus has to be on that. I mean, Gupta age is a golden age in terms of art, architecture, literature. On various aspects, it was a golden age. Why it is a golden age? Similar way, during these Guptas and these Vagadagas, Vardhanas time, what all the popular is like a trade systems existed here. What was the status of the trade here? What was the status of women here? What was the status of Buddhism, Jainism here? Or what was the status of education and education institutions here? Okay, or what was the status of feudalism? These are something. Gupta's coinage is asked, or Gupta why it is a golden age is asked, or Gupta's age feudalism is asked, or the same way educational status, women's status, religion status asked. So these are your focus areas you must do. See, there are questions like the causes for the rise and fall of the Guptas. Okay. There are questions like these foreigners' observations about Gupta administration, Gupta society, Gupta women, Gupta religion, etc. Similar way, yes, Samudragupta, Chandragupta, some popular Gupta rulers are there. What are their achievements and their contributions, etc. Then regarding this Gupta coinage is asked. Then they asked about the status of the women. They asked about this religion, literature, and arts of Gupta age. So very simple. Most of these questions, I would say that from the keywords only. Okay, I mean you are asked about Nalanda Mahavira. You are asked about this Sanskrit literature of Gupta age. You are asked about these contributions of Aryabhatta, Varaha Mihira, Brahmagupta. So see, you have to cover this. You have to cover this. Guptas, Vardhanas, Vagadagas. See, all these rulers, what are their contributions to art, architecture, literature, their associations with the Buddhism, Jainism, and what all the foreign travelers visited there during that time, what are their historical accounts or what are their observations on various things of India. So these are things you have to focus here. Yes.
Okay, sir. 11th unit is regional states during Gupta age.
Okay.
What sort of questions we should expect from this?
11th is, yeah, as you said, that it is about so many regional states during Guptas, Kadambas, Pallavas, Chalukyas, or lots of regional states are there. Focus is that their polity and administration you have to focus, their trade guilds you have to focus, literature you have to focus. There is a Tamil Bhakti movement, Shankaracharya. So many, I mean, during this time, so many Bhakti Sufi saints, or maybe especially the Bhakti saints, lived. They have different schools of philosophies, different thoughts and teachings, etc. Yapala, Senas, Rashtrakutas, Paramaras, Hoyshalas, Pandyas. See, just focus on what are their contributions to art, architecture, literature, what are their contributions to administration or what are their administrative ideas, what was the life of these common people during these regional kingdoms. Okay, then this status of education, status of temple architecture, or status of this what is called Buddhism, Jainism. Okay, then foreign travelers like Al-Baruni, Suleiman, you see, so many foreigners are arrived. So, what are their observations? Those things you are supposed to study. So, simple, just to try to understand what are the popular post-Gupta or maybe Gupta regional kingdoms. What are their what are their contributions to art, architecture, literature first. Then, in a general graph, you study what was the political system of this age, or administrative system of this age, or economic system of this age. Okay, those things you have to cover. See, the questions go like this. For example, main aspects of polity and society under Pallavas. Then there is a question. There was a struggle for supremacy in South India between Chalukyas and Pallavas. Then there is a triangular conflict. Inferior cavalry of Rajputs not only the cause for the defeat. Okay, so what are the reasons for the defeat of these Rajputs in the hands of Turkish, Afghani, and Mughal forces? Then they asked local self-government under imperial Cholas. The Pallava Chalukya conflict was repeated. Pallava's contributions were asked. Then see Chalukya's contributions were asked. Pallavas, Chalukyas again asked. Pallavas again asked. Again, Pallavas asked so many questions on Pallavas, Chalukyas, Rashtrakutas, their cultural contributions. Then they asked a question about this development of regional temple architecture. Kailasha temple is asked. Then about these Cholas. Yes, Chola's contributions to architecture is asked. So something I would say that this is a module focusing on these regional kingdoms, post Gupta or Gupta regional kingdoms and their cultural contributions. That is one of the significant area you have to focus. And what was the pattern of their administration and the social status. Okay. Okay, come on.
Sir, 12th unit is themes in early Indian cultural history.
Okay.
Can you explain it?
Themes in early Indian cultural history, the various evolution of these languages and literature, various stages in the evolution of art and architecture. There is IVC art is there, or Mauryan art is there, Buddhist Jain art is there, or art and architecture during Guptas, post Guptas. So many evolutionary stages are there. Many major philosophical thinkers and schools, for example, orthodox and unorthodox schools of philosophies, what is called our like Samkhya Nyaya, Vaiseshika, Mimamsa, Vedanta kind of orthodox schools of philosophies are there. Unorthodox schools like Charvaka, Buddhism, Jainism, Najivikas, so many unorthodox schools of philosophies. So you will have to study what are the central ideas of these various schools of philosophies, how they throw light into or how they initiate a process of this intellectual renaissance or cultural renaissance. Okay. Similar way, so many thinkers are there. There are conflicting ideas are there. Okay, so you have to compare and analyze the teachings, ideologies of these thinkers and these philosophers of this ancient India, early medieval India. Evolution of art and architecture, especially temple architecture, then literature. This is something you have to focus. Okay, what are the scientific literature, religious literature, secular literature? What are the Indian literature, foreign literature? What are the various art forms developed, architectural forms developed? You must have a very comparative analysis on these various aspects of this ancient and early medieval India. So mainly the cultural themes you are supposed to cover there. Okay, cultural themes, especially language, literature, art, architecture, those elements, and the rulers of the age and their contributions, educational system, temple architecture, or these literary works, especially secular Kalidasa, yes, secular works and these religious works. Those things you are supposed to cover in this themes part. So here, one thing I will tell you that all questions, most of the questions, we just discussed this paper one, Ancient India, 12 modules. Most of the questions are framed out of this syllabus, or from the syllabus only. So there is no need to go for something which is unknown. Just avoid it here. Focus has to be on whatever is clearly stated in the syllabus, what all the keywords. See, the advantage of the syllabus of the history optional is that each and every keyword is well curated or well drafted, well crafted, well given in the syllabus. Nothing is hidden, no hidden areas, even though you look it as a huge syllabus, but the reality is that no hidden areas are there. This is the only things you have to study. Every word by word they have given what all topics you have to focus. Now, when you look into the questions also, one thing is clear that only the core areas you have to focus upon, because the questions, 90% of questions came from these keywords only. Am I right? So that is something I would like to advise you or share you that just focus on the key areas and just focus on the previous year's questions. I mean, just revise the previous year's questions and to find out the core areas. Prepare the template of key points for each and prepare well. Along with this, you practice mapping work. Okay. So, like the very popular map sites, IVC sites, Vedic sites, Buddhism, Jainism, educational centers, trade centers, or this what is called political capital cities, and the popular megalithic sites, educational centers. So that is the way you have to cover the mapping part also. So things will be much easier for you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you.
Gallant IAS, chasing your passion to ace.